microwave beams attached to a computer from their ships. And
wouldn't surprise me. That kind of technology would work. If you had a template, you could, get the information.
And I'll tell you what he said the earlier ones were when we get back, because you may actually be able to do what he said somebody needs to do. You're listening to Rumor Mill News. I'm talking about crop circles. I'm sharing some of the things that my late husband, Gunter Rustbacher, told me. And I'm talking with Clif High, and don't go away, because, as I said, the best is yet to come. You're listening to Rumor Mill News Radio. This is Raylan Allen. I'm talking with Clif High from Half Past Human, and right before we went to break, I shared with Clif that my late husband, Gunter Rustbacher, had given me information in the early 90s on what the crop circles were all about. And what he said is the first crop circles were teaching you how to speak crop circle language, and the rest of the crop circles to come were giving you information. And he said if anybody would put all of the crop circles in a video and just watch it, maybe one time or over and over, he said you would just, by osmosis take in the language that they're written in, and then you'd be able to understand everything that they were saying. And I am wondering if somebody has already done that but hasn't released it to the rest of us yet.
I'm aware of at least one organization that has images of 2,500 of these things, and they're very intrigued with my swirly program because they came to the same conclusion that I did, was that there was two forms of communication going on, one of which attempts to communicate through the rational mind, and the other one which may, it's just a supposition, attempt to communicate through these things which are just aching to be spun. The images just almost demand that to the human mind that you spin these little things, and when you do, you get strange visual effects. I've got some videos out there on YouTube. If you go and do a search on crop circles or swirlies, it'll probably pull it up, and you can see what is going on. But I took those off of my screen with a relatively low-resolution cheapo camera, and the screen itself is exhibiting a lot more effects to the eye than appear through the video. The video is restricted to 30 or 40 frames per second, and I have some of these things spinning at 300 and 400 frames per second. There's multiple layers of images going on. So they're quite intriguing. I don't know where we'll go with those, but this organization is putting a lot of work and has man-hours and people and money involved in just doing that, assuming that there's a level of communication going on in which the primer, the language, is being sent ahead of the rest of the data. And their supposition they've shared with me is that 2008 was the year we entered into the grammar phase. So before that, we were given the alphabet, and from 2008 on, they suspect we'll be given the grammar, maybe 1 or 2 years, and then we'll get into the actual text of things.
Well, yes, I did locate your crop circles on YouTube, and I'll be posting them on Rumor Mill News as soon as I'm off the air. And I do agree with what you just said. It's sort of like they taught us the alphabet and language, and now we're up almost into college-level physics, I think.
Well, I'd say that we may still be at the level of, primer school, lucky to get out of 6th grade, about ready to go to recess because it's hurting our head, but we're progressing, yes.
And describe what these swirlies did to you when you watched them. I was able to download them, and I was able to, watch them one by one. I couldn't make them swirl, so I'll have to figure that out.
When you take our Crop Swirlies program down and run it, there's a little text file, and you put in the name of the bitmap, and it'll cause that one to swirl. You move the keys back and forth, and they start moving. There's instructions in the software program itself when it comes up.
Okay, well, as usual, I never read instructions.
Yeah, there you go. And we've also had some problem with some Vista machines with this weird side-by-side error, but we have a number of people working on the code. The code's for free. It's in the package now, so if you just go and download our Crop Swirlies program and you're a programmer, you can fix it for whatever platform you want, and off you go. But some of the effects that have been reported are lower anxiety, better sleep. One guy who's a long-term meditator. He's, I think, 66 or 67. In Holland has tried it, and as a result of his years of martial arts, he has suffered great levels of knee pain, and he's actually able to effectively mentally control the pain now and has reduced his level of drugs in support of the pain from his knees as a result of doing his meditation after a particular regimen of swirling particular images. They're quasi-hypnotic. If you're an epileptic, or have any other kind of brain issues, I wouldn't pursue them. They're probably not going to be beneficial to you. And I'm not sure that there's any there at my particular level. In other words, they've affected my ability to meditate, but, my left leg hasn't entered another dimension and I can't pull, critters from another part of space or anything. There may be that level of capability hidden in them, but I think that has yet to be revealed. And it may also be that my personal situation would be such that I wouldn't be susceptible to that where someone else might. In other words, the range of human ability is vast, as is the range of human psychicness, and who knows what effects will be triggered in which people by what particular swirling approach. That's why I put the program out there rather than restrict it to YouTube or anything. And that's why it's free.
That's why I also love your warnings on it. Don't use this.
But yeah, let's be real clear about it,
Yeah.
This could be very hurtful stuff. Having written and dealt with Vortex, which is my speed reading program that flashes the words up to you, I ran into all kinds of issues with epilepsy and other mental illnesses all the way back in the early 90s as I developed that. So, it is a rock-solid thing. If you're an epileptic, these will trigger seizures. It's just a matter of time.
Okay, one of the last things I want to get into, and we probably have just, whetted people's appetites, and because we've whetted people's appetites, where should they go to get more information? So let's tell them where to go first.
Well, for the Crop Swirlies program, if you wanted to go to halfpasthuman.com, there's a little Crop Swirlies word up there that takes you to a page, and you can download it and try it yourself. I have some of my old Alta reports with the projections and stuff for sale off of my site under products. But if you want free stuff, you can get it on George Ure's site. He puts all of our public postings out there. And we'll have...
And what's his site? How do we get there?
His is urbansurvival.com.
Okay.
Got this friend of mine who says, I'm not your maid and I'm not your mama. And I extend that to say, I'm not your Google. So usually it's like, I'll mention the words. You guys go and Google them because you'll find if you type in Urban Survival or George Ure, you'd be able to get to it.
Absolutely.
But in the future here, and maybe you'll have me back in a month or so, we'll be able to talk about a new project that we're bringing out that is going to have a much lower price point than the Alta reports. Our future projection technology was very bandwidth intensive. It cost us thousands of dollars to do the internet scans. And due to the financial situation, we're just not able to afford to continue to run it that particular way. So we're looking at another project. And like I say, maybe in a month from now, I'll be able to give some more definitive information about it.
Well, that'll be fantastic. I'll get you, I'll call you off air, and we'll set up a date very soon. Is it really true that every single one of our astronauts was a Mason?
That sure is the details that are coming through. And in fact, it goes, George Washington was a Mason. Masons are everywhere. And, I'm not a joiner, so I don't trust anybody that would willingly join any, I'm kind of like Groucho Marx. If they would have me, I don't want to be there. But the organization mind is something I've never really been able to harmonize with. And as a result of which, my natural distrust of that, I just assume they're up to no good. And that's a good basis for understanding because it prevents a lot of missteps. If you assume that the upper echelon Masons were there for greater omni-humanity, you're going to be sadly disappointed when you discover some of the real truth of the matter. Now, the lower 3 degrees of Masonry, I think of as a pool, kind of like non-commissioned officers would be a pool for, in wartime, extracting into the officer class.
Oh, isn't that an amazing thing? So you are saying that you would probably bet that most of our military officers come out of the lower degree of the Masons.
No, but I'm saying that we have to be very careful about linguistics. I say a key solid core substructure, yes.
Okay.
And in fact, we know this to be the case because of the number of what are known as traveling lodges that exist within the U.S. military structure.
Oh,
in other words, a lodge not of a permanent home that practices the craft and rites, as it's termed, in places of temporary abode.
Is it also true that every one of our presidents has been a Mason?
I don't know how true that is, but the majority of them are. And it doesn't matter, I believe, beyond Kennedy, that beyond then the clampdown of control was so extensive from the military alien industrial complex that I don't think it no longer matters if you're a Mason or not, if you're president and you're 27 degrees down in the security system. What does it really matter?
What does it really matter?
You're just a tool like any other civil servant. And then there's the issue of the proof. Are there aliens anywhere around? Well, if we look at the evolution of our technology, there really is a proof. There was a huge schism that occurred at the supposed time of the crash of the spaceships in the 40s. Those crashes may have been as a result of some Tesla technology that was used, but nonetheless, from that point on, all of our vacuum tube technology suddenly rapidly shifted over to transistors, and there's not a commensurate history of pre-exploratory stuff for the transistor or solid-state world. In other words, we weren't working on that in the 20s such that it would be ready in the 40s. It just appeared. So, and then there's lasers and, all of the other things that just appeared without the commensurate required evolutionary time lag. This is all pre-computer. If we'd had computers at that point, you could have said, oh, well, we were modeling this all in computers, and there never would have been a need for a physical reality check. But, of course, those depend on solid-state electronics, et cetera. So you really get to the point where you have to stop and you examine our technology and all the other things and say, yeah, something intruded in the 40s. And things shifted radically after Eisenhower.
So you're thinking that Tesla technology may have caused some of the alien craft to crash.
There's a history that shows that from Tesla's death and the seizure of his records by the FBI and the transfer of that information over to the military, that was really the beginning of what we can think of as the visible black ops, where they started sucking money away for stuff they didn't tell us about. And then, as I say, there was an explosion of that in the late 40s and commensurate with the supposed crash of the UFOs.
My husband that I referred to was the number 3 man in the CIA, meaning the banker, and that was his job, was to fund black ops.
Right, and you notice that we weren't really doing that in Roosevelt's time, in the 30s, the way that we are now, nor did we do it in Teddy Roosevelt's time at all.
Yeah, you are
but curiously, of course.
So you were saying that the main lodge in the U.S. that gives problems is the Scottish Lodge, and it can be traced to Skull and Bones and go all the way back to Germany, and then you said, and there's probably some space alien at the top of it.
That may well be the case. There may be some other form of control. John Dee acknowledged that the power that was given to his organization from 1545 onward developed as a result of their symbolic interaction with what he called the macros, which is this higher order of intelligence. We communicate through symbols. The symbols can be thought of as very complex groupings of words that are expressed as a glyph. So there we are, back to crop circles again.
Extraordinary. Well, I will be setting up a radio interview with you in a month. I thank you so much. This has been the most fascinating interview I think I have done in months.
Well, I'm glad you were amused, and let's all have happy thoughts and go forward here, and I'll talk to you in about a month.
Okay, thank you, Clif.
Sure thing. Bye.